This is the Zero SRF, and I've been given the chance to ride this for the day. And in many ways it's comparable to the Harley-Davidson Livewire in the sense they're both fun to ride street fighter bikes designed for a bit of commuting and a bit of sport as well. And they're also two of the best selling motorbikes in the world. Unfortunately, I don't have a Harley-Davidson Livewire today. But I do have a friend that does have one. Charlie.
Hey, how are you?
Morning. Thanks for helping us out today. And this, I assume, is the Harley.
Yes, it is. Yep, that's this is quite a different version of the one that we rode from the bottom of Argentina. It was quite funny because Harley-Davidson, when we approached them, because they've got their new Pan American launching quite soon, and anyway, this was back in 2000. End of 18, beginning of 19, and we said, look, we're thinking about going on this adventure, and they thought it's brilliant. They're going to want our Pan American, and like the BMW GS, and then they said, and then we said, well, actually, we'd like to go on your electric Livewire, and we'd like you to make it look like the Pan American. So they'd spent all their time on this bike, so then they had to build another bike.
When I heard you guys were doing it, but on the Livewire, it's not the first bike that springs to mind, because it's a street fighter style bike. It's not the usual thing that you.
Well, it's Harley-Davidson as well.
That's true,
I mean, people, when you say to people, when we were riding through South America on these bikes, people say, oh, you're doing another trip, or you're doing a trip, how fantastic, and what are you on? And we said, we're on electric bikes, and they'd say, oh, wow. And then say, what bikes are they? And we say, Harley-Davidsons, and they just would start laughing. And I think what's very interesting is because you're on the Zero,
yep.
their latest bike, and we actually looked at Zero for Long Way Up as well, and I think at the time we decided that we decided on the Harley-Davidson, but it was a real close. It was a real close thing. My first impression of that is it's nice. I think they've gone up a big step from what they had before. They've gone in with the LCD screen, which I think was needed. Their last one was a bit old-fashioned. The whole bike felt a bit old-fashioned. This one has got that look of that. It's slightly that sort of Ducati kind of.
Yeah, it's the frame.
It's the frame and the suspension on the left side there. It's a tidy looking bike. It really is. It's got a little bit of the KTM look on the front. Everyone steals everybody's idea. There's no new idea.
Yeah.
Is there?
Well, that's enough talking. Let's, if you jump on your Charley-Davidson motorbike, and I'll jump on the Zero, and we'll take it for a spin.
I've actually spent quite a lot of time on this bike, which is the Harley-Davidson Livewire. Went from the bottom of Argentina to LA on it with Ewan McGregor, and we did Long Way Up. And so we went through the whole thing of the range anxiety of it all and plugging in. I mean, there were no fast chargers, so we just spent the whole time with the generosity of people and plugging into their power on like a 3-pin socket. So it was quite a thing to get your head round for the charge of it all. But once you got used to it all, it turned out to be one of the most fantastic things, because it wasn't so much about huge distance, but it was about the people that you met along the way, and that you were sort of not only plugging into people's houses, but you were plugging into people's lives.
The first thing you notice with a bike like the Zero is the power. This thing will produce about 140 torque, and that's just as well actually, because although the bike needs the power, because it's quite a heavy bike, it's about 225 kilos, although most of that weight is down low, so the centre of gravity is actually pretty low, making it nice and stable. So the ride position is pretty good. I mean, I'd prefer for me the foot pegs to be a little bit lower, but that's because I've got pretty messed up knees and hips. So, the feet pegs definitely feel a lot more like a racing bike than a touring bike or some of the street fighters that I've ridden in the past. But it's comfortable. The seat again for me is nice deep set. So if you've got short legs like me, you'll find that quite nice.
So one of the things that you notice straight away when you ride an electric bike is that there's no engine noise, and then you realise that when you ride a bike, there are 3 senses. There's the movement, the wind, the feel of the road, and the engine. And the engine really gives you an idea of how fast you're going, depending on the revs. So when that's taken away, it takes a moment to realise on the electric bike that feeling. But you quickly forget about that, because what you then realise is that you feel a little bit more connected to the road, and your connection of what you're going over, and the feeling of the bike is much more intense. So because of that, engine noise is gone. You feel the bumps, and you hear the bumps, and you feel what you're riding on much more, which is super interesting. So it gives it a very different feel, and that's one of the biggest things you notice on the electric bike. The other thing you notice on an electric bike is that the power. Oh, look, look, a lovely old BSA. Nice bike, by the way. Now talk about the old and the new. That's a very old BSA, and this is a very new Harley-Davidson. So, but the other thing that you really notice once you've got over the electric of it is that this bike in particular handles incredibly well. I mean, it really does. It handles like a sports bike, which is very strange for a Harley-Davidson, because, you know, Harley, you'd expect a V-twin cruising bike, you know, not necessarily known for its cornering. And then you sit on this and it's an all-out, you know, naked sports bike.
So it's got various modes, so you can change effectively the performance and the efficiency of the bike. You can choose to put it in the sportier modes. That'll give you maximum acceleration, maximum speed, you know, all that sort of stuff, maximum performance, but it will chew into your range and your battery power. Or you can switch to one of the more economical modes, like Eco Mode, where your top speed will be limited to 70 miles an hour, and the acceleration won't be as good, but your battery will last a lot longer. So this bike will do a maximum speed of 124 miles an hour, and it'll sustain a speed of about 110 miles an hour. That is in the sports mode. If you were to crack it down to the Eco Mode, it would limit you at 70 miles an hour to conserve battery power. There is one other mode. When the battery gets down to below 10%, it goes into kind of get you home limp mode, and that severely reduces the acceleration and performance of the bike, and also I think limits you to about 40 miles an hour. The idea is that you know, it's good for maximum conservancy in order to get you home or get you to a charge point. So Charlie, you've been riding the Harley for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
So what have you discovered? That, I mean, I tend to get the bikes for a day and that's it. So how's it changed your riding, your life? How's it compared to, you know, when you're riding combustion engine bikes?
I think what's really interesting about having spent so much time with electric vehicles is that, you know, everybody, I think people are afraid of the electric of it all.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, someone says like an electric car, they go, well, I'm going to get this electric car, but it only does 300 miles. I mean, how can I live? You know, I can't live that. And you go, well, hang on a minute. Well, how many miles do you actually do a day?
Yeah.
Probably 20. You know, this bike will do, you know, it'll do 130, 140 miles urban. So around the Surrey Hills and London. If you're doing a lot of motorway work or dual carriageway work, then of course your battery is going to sitting at 70, 80 miles an hour. It's not, you're not going to get the same kind of range. I think once you've ridden these things for a month or so, a couple of months, you then you know, your range anxiety tends to go away. Yeah. But all of that range anxiety is superseded by how much fun these bikes are.
You know, and most people, certainly when they're commuting day to day, aren't going to bang out 120 miles in a day.
And you've got to remember that it's costing you £1.12 to charge it every day from home. You know, fast chargers are more expensive, but then you don't really use them because you're just going back and forth. If you are going a long journey, and say you are doing 200 miles, and say you do 125 miles on the charge, then if you only got, you know, if you've only got 40, 50 miles left to go, then you only have to charge it for 20 minutes to get to there. So it's just about, and that's just about getting used to it. But you know, but the great thing about these is that you know, that 100 miles that you're doing in between is just puts a smile on your face. Every person who's ridden this, you know, as you're going along, because you can hear them because they are like when we're riding together, you know, we can chat to each other quite happily because there's no engine noise. But every time someone has a go on this, they go along and they stop and they get off the bike and they take the helmet off and they are gibbering away with excitement, and they're going, I just had no idea how much fun this bike is. And so once you've got all of that, then the real joy of the whole thing is just coming off the power a little bit here, and the acceleration is mind-boggling. It accelerates faster than a Ferrari Testarossa, and that's £500,000, and this is 20-odd thousand pounds. 0 to 60 in just under 3 seconds, and it feels very agile and nimble. It really twists around, and you know, it feels wonderful to ride. It is a very heavy bike because it has a big battery, but the way they've designed the battery, so the battery is quite low, and the motor, unlike a lot of other bikes, the motor sits lengthways underneath the battery at the bottom of the bike here, and so that means all the weight is very low, so it does have that nimble feeling. It doesn't feel heavy.
One thing about riding electric motorbikes is that it is just easier and a bit less stressful. That kind of lack of need to change gears does make it a very simple task. You can concentrate a bit more on the road surface, the environment, you know, and moving the bike around a bit. Now, some people won't like that. Some people like the interaction that you get from having gears, having that kind of that intimacy control that you get with a combustion engine bike. But I have to say, it depends what you're using it for. So if I was doing a daily commute, 20, 30, 40 miles, and I want to take the bike, I'd get an electric bike. It's just much easier. You know, for a hard day at the office, you just jump on, you can concentrate on just enjoying the ride.
They say this does 160 odd miles on the thing. This they say, you know, they're a bit more modest about that.
So what do they say that will do?
Well, this will in town or in the Surrey Hills like this, where you're not sitting on a motorway. You know, you can get it between 130 and 140 odd miles.
And you've had that,
yeah. I've even had up to 150 in town.
Yeah, they claim 161. Zero claim 161, but I don't know of anyone who's got that.
Yeah.
Most people, even the English electric motorbike company who bought us off today, even they in their website say like 100, 120 max.
120 max, yeah.
Because what I found with this is that in the sort of sport mode, give max performance, it's got the least regenerative braking.
Oh really? This one for sport mode, this has much higher regen.
So I found this one. That's one thing I think I had in sport mode the whole time. Obviously, is when you come off the throttle, it's not got as much of that engine braking that I would expect. So I think the first thing I'd do is, if this was my bike, I'd go to the custom settings, I put it on obviously maximum sport mode, but with maximum regen braking. So storage wise, I have got this massive boot here to store all sorts of stuff in. Look at that.
Perfect. So you can put your cable in there.
Yeah.
When you go into someone's house and stuff like that. But if you were going to get the extended range battery, which is probably what you need,
yes,
you would lose that, right?
To match these two bikes on range, then yes, you need to get the extra battery which goes
in there, and then so you lose the space there. Whereas the Harley-Davidson has a clever little thing in the back here, where you have in the back, you have your cables kept in here, and so they're always there.
And actually, that's something worth noting as well.
Oh yes, yeah.
Is that you can either put an extra battery pack in there to make a bigger range, or you can put a faster charger. This has got a sort of 6 kilowatt charging capacity, but you can double that to 12, which will half your charging time. However, that can rapid charge.
Well, this has, so you have
Type 2.
Type 2,
yeah.
And this is, I suppose, what they call Type 3, which is CCS. So at the moment, that is without the extended battery, how much?
19,500.
19,500, so this is 28. Mm-hmm. With the extended battery.
It's going to be about 21, I think.
21, 20, because 21, 22 grand, something like that.
22
in the end. So there still is a chunk of money there, but not
as much.
The difference isn't as much as it sounds, is it? But you know, I mean, that's the problem with these bikes, is they are still a little bit expensive, aren't they? Jumping off the Livewire and jumping back onto this, my first impression is that they both feel quite similar riding positions. The geometry between the handlebars and my seat and my feet seem very similar. I think the balance of this bike is actually quite good when you compare it with the Harley-Davidson. They both feel quite flickable. My first thought is that this one is much noisier than the Harley. The motor has a lot more noise. I'm surprised about that, and the initial throttle response is quite abrupt on this, and it doesn't have the same kind of punch and acceleration all the way through as the other bike does. So, but other than that, you know, they're quite similar. Once you're on the go, you know, it feels nimble and fun. I'd be quite happy to sit on it and ride for a couple of hours. Would be absolutely fine. I think for what it is and for the money, I think it's not bad at all. Aesthetically and how they look, they're both quite pleasing to the eye, aren't they?
This has improved dramatically, I think, from the sort of early models, the Zeros. I wasn't that keen on them looks-wise. This is a nice looking bike, I think.
Huge difference between them. I think I have to say, I think, you know, the lines, what they tried to do here is bring the lines and they tried to bring it along and join in the rear suspension. I love that attention to detail. They really tried hard to keep the lines going on this.
First time I ever saw one of those, it had shades of that old-fashioned Norton style look, which I really like as well.
You can see that the Harley, I get the feeling that the Harley has got a lot of Buell in it, which was one of their sort of sister companies. I get the feeling that this one has if you were trying to compare them with something, this has it kind of feels a little Ducati-esque,
with the frame,
with the frame and the way the suspension is laid and stuff like that. But you know, they're they're good bikes. Yeah, so I mean, if I was to look at the Zero and the Harley-Davidson, and you look at the other manufacturers, there aren't that many bikes out there that proper bikes to ride, and I think that Zero and Harley-Davidson are certainly up there with a couple of proper bikes to ride. I have to say, I'm impressed. If I was to choose money to object, I would definitely go for the extra battery in this one for sure. If I was at a push, even though I own a Harley, if I was at a push, I would still pick the Harley as the better bike. But this is not that far behind. It's a good bike.
Well, they're both good bikes. I know you've got your firm favourite, which is understandable, and I wasn't sure about the Harley, but having seen it and a little play in it and watched you ride it, more importantly, it's a pretty good machine.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think they're both. I didn't know what to expect from the Zero, and it's come across really well. I think it doesn't have the same kind of throttle response. I think this one is much more linear. And I found that the Zero was quite noisy. It was much noisier motor than the Harley. But other than that, I think they were relatively, relatively similar.
I mean, I think both good bikes. They've got differences definitely. But if someone's thinking of getting something for commuting to work during the week and then having a blast at the weekend, they're both worth taking out for a demo ride.
I think so. I mean, as much as you do or don't. The electric is coming, and I think I think if you give it a go and get over that little bit of the range anxiety syndrome, you actually find that they're actually quite nice to ride. Yeah. Any bike is a good bike as long as it's got two wheels. It's got my vote.
Yeah, fair one. Well, few thank yous. So start off, thank you, Charlie, for joining us today. Thank you to the English Electric Motorbike Company for supplying the Zero for me today. Thank you as always to our Patreon supporters and YouTube members, without whose support episodes like this would not be possible. If that's something you might be interested in, then take a look at the links below. Apart from that, as always, we'll finish with, if you have been.
Oh yes, I'm not sure what the tagline is, but I think you've got to keep watching Fully Charged, because that's where it all happens, electrically.
What he said.